What was your worst sexual experience? I was younger, full of mania and weed. I was at a bar and just chatting with my friend who was bartending that night. A much older man was like, "Hey, I'll buy you lunch at this expensive Italian place for a blow job." I say sure, and we head to the bathroom and head into a stall. Long story short, I am doing the deed and we hear the bathroom door open, so I stand up. This fucking guy who I'm blowing decided to sit on the toilet and taking an actual dump, so I bust out of the stall and try to ignore the thoughts of finding the shortest pier to take a very long walk off of. I was 27 and we were going at it pretty hard and intense, and he missed the cooch and sort of slid in weirdly painful, and I winced. He said, "Let's take a break," and got up to get us some water. I put my hand down there and was bleeding. Of course, I was aroused, so there was a lot of blood down there. Couldn't stop the bleeding. Seriously, so much blood. Ended up going to the ER and needed 5 stitches just a little inside my vag on the left wall where it had a small tear. Side note, in the ER, they take you back straight away when you have blood streaming down your legs. Trying to have sex when I didn't know I had a problem called congenital neuroprolific provoked vestibulodynia. Then hiding it for years because I was so ashamed. Then seeking help for years because most all docs never heard of it except 2. Being horribly abused by a doctor using me as a guinea pig for his tests without telling me. Then finding a real doctor to cure it, and recovering for 6 weeks with 60 stitches. Then having to work on the vaginismus that's present every time I have sex and probably will be for the rest of my life because of the trauma. In college, an old girlfriend was riding me, and at a certain point she stopped to grab a can of Coke on the bedstand. She brings it to her lips and starts chugging. Just taking an all-around breather. A quick water break. My cock's still in her. I looked up at her and was like, "What the hell, lol?" So I called her out lightheartedly and she started laughing so hard the soda just fell out of her mouth and onto my belly. It was actually very funny. We both got a kick out of it. In high school I was getting a blowjob whilst standing up facing her closed bedroom door. I pulled out to nut on her face when her 6 feet 7 inches dad opened the door. I nutted on her face whilst locking eyes with her father. I honestly think that if he was not so worried that if he hit me that he would have gotten cum on him, then he would have beaten my ass. I ended up dating her for 2 years after that. He father eventually got over it, but I think he was happy when I moved away. She peed on me during sex, for like a full 30 seconds. Completely intentional, non-consenting. Before you make the claim that she's a squirter, she did that earlier. This was not that. At first I thought, this happens sometimes, and then the stream just kept going. This was genuinely just because she either thought she could get away with it, or because she didn't care. Whatever it was, I called her an asshole and told her to get out of my house. Went out with a gal who seemed great. Not much for conversation though. We had drinks, played some pool and went back to her place. We decided if she starfished. No participation, no sounds, no heat. It was like making love to a corpse. I was eating her out and finally raised my head and asked if she was still awake. She said yes. I tried for another 10 minutes and then gave up. Figured sleep was better. Went on a couple of dates with the biggest crush of my life. She was absolutely out of my league. She once came to my place when my parents were out of town, and after hours of making out when it finally came to the deed, I couldn't get my thing up. Tried again after a couple of weeks and didn't happen. We parted post that. Never had a boner issue in my life, even now. Will absolutely regret it for the rest of my life. She wanted to do anal. After a few minutes she asked me to pull out, cause she felt weird, and just as I pulled out she just started uncontrollably shitting the bed. We were in a nice hotel. She went to shower and wash off her embarrassment, and I went to the front desk to ask for new linens as we spilled a drink on the bed. Went out to a bar and came back, but we couldn't get the smell to go away. After getting done with a girl I had a crush on for years, I said that was amazing, you're definitely the hottest girl I have been with. Was 18 at the time and I thought that was a good idea to say. She says, "Hey, you're not the smallest guy I've been with." 10 years later and we are still together and married with 3 kids. I know it's not the worst experience ever, but I haven't been with many. One-time thing with a random girl from Tinder. She just lay face down and told me to get in and refused to move at all. Didn't let me touch her anywhere when I wanted to pleasure her. Also insisted on doing it in the one room in the apartment that had neither windows nor an air conditioner during an extremely hot August day, which works wonderfully well with prone bone. Absolute 0-10. Second sexual encounter, she had vaginismus. I tried to overcome it, but the pain was too intense. Having a foreskin made it worse, as the surface of my penis wasn't desensitized. She decided to solve the problem by squeezing me with her legs to force my penis in. Hurt like hell, and distracted me so much that I couldn't build toward orgasm. Foreskin was bright red for 2 days. The one and only time I was in a position to get laid at a party when I was younger. I was too drunk on whiskey and couldn't get it up. I actually muttered the infamous "this has never happened before" to her. Luckily she wasn't too offended or upset about the whole thing, but the morning after was super awkward and we didn't bother trying again after that. My then boyfriend would beg, cry and threaten to kill himself if I didn't want to have sex, so usually I ended up giving up and letting him do his thing. One time I decided to pretend to be sleeping dead to see if it would turn him off and he'd leave me alone, and because it helped me dissociate from the situation, he started drooling on my tits instead. One time my GF at the time and I were going at it and she was on top and her dangly earring fell out of her ear and into my mouth and I choked on it. She didn't realize I was choking and actually orgasmed thinking I was enjoying it. I was able to halfway cough it up and tried to grab it and it hooked into my throat and I threw up. That was fun. Hygiene. I get that we're all human with bodily functions and we sweat, but I nearly threw up going down on a chick one time. It's very likely she had a yeast infection, but that was the first time I ever gagged and came close to puking after eating pussy. It almost traumatized me into never doing it again, but I'm back in the saddle now. Was going to go down on a guy and once he pulled his boxers off, his balls smelled like sweat and rotten cheese. It was so strong I ran to the bathroom and gagged, literally was gonna puke because of the stank. I pretended my mom called me and left him there. I never put someone number on block so fast. My ex used to try to have straight up conversations during. Not even dirty talk, just "do you want Italian food or Mexican food for dinner tonight?" I was the first person he slept with, so maybe he didn't know the unspoken rule of not talking about our plans with your family for later today during sex. I invited a girl over to my college dorm and we were making out, getting into it, taking off clothes. Then I put the condom on and she just laid back completely still and said, "Okay, go ahead." She stayed completely still the whole time and I faked that I had come about 5 minutes in. Little dead fish. Friend went down on a guy for the first time and the English dude said that was the worst blowjob I have ever received. She was like, "What are you, the Simon Cowell of blowjobs or something?" They are still dating. Edit: yes, this was the first time she went down on any guy ever. Met through Tinder. She was 5,100 pounds heavier than her pics. She was friendly and still had decent chemistry, so the date continued. We ended up making out. I went down on her for about 1 second before I nearly threw up. Apparently she had a yeast, was no second date. For an anniversary, an ex and I got absolutely shithoused on Disaronno and whiskey, and while trying to get it on, we were so sloppy. Managed to get the prone bone going, we both passed out before finishing. Then, the next day came the super pukey hangover. It was miserable. When I was 19, one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever dated was in the middle of a sexual awakening. She wanted to go down on me so bad, and I just ended up getting teeth the whole time. I tried giving her a direction, and she wasn't grasping it. I felt bad for both of us. Didn't know you're only supposed to use a little bit of lube when doing anal. I squirted that whole bottle into her ass. Couple minutes in and she blew shit all over the wall behind us. Like a dead body outline on the streets or like something on a cartoon. Good times. One time my friend put his dick in me and just kind of flopped on top of me until he came. He then proceeded to roll over and fall asleep. I got up and sat in a recliner and drank a beer while I stared into the distance and contemplated my life. First time trying anal for me, and I was fucking my girl in the arse. Poop came out. Fair enough, shit happens when you do anal. Anyway. She ate her own poop, picked up a nugget off the bed and ate it. Not worst but up there for sure. This girl that I kinda thought was cute. She must have felt the same because we ended up doing it on another friend's bed. Sadly the day was not my beat and I lasted under a minute. Not awkward or uncomfortable but defeating for sure. I sobered up after getting the blood moving with some girl and realized I was with a wholly unattractive woman who weighed more than my bed. I immediately faked finishing and got out of there ASAP. It was fucking awful and a wake-up call. Friend was fucking a girl in the next room. She told him to call me cause she wanted DP lol. Tried putting it in her ass, it was too tight, I couldn't do it. Lost boner due to the awkward situation, left in shame. Still fucked her after. In high school we were banging in my car in a church parking lot. She was very vocal in bed and got the cops called on us. Cops pulled up as she's spitting half my load onto my fucking backseat. Cops gave us the warning and made us leave. Well, she said she was a squirter and that it's totally not pee. So I went down on her and she came like a fire hose. It was definitely pee, and now with a mouthful of piss, my gag reflex kicked in and I vomited all in her pussy. My dick was literally worn out from too much sex jerking off that I started bleeding in her and had to pull out and rest because all the skin was red and bleeding. Not fun at all, but it healed in like a week. From the age of 10 to 14, I was regularly and repeatedly used sexually by my church's youth pastor. He broke up with me, when I got too old for him, and that really put everything into perspective for me. She was on top and put her entire weight on me. My penis bent in a way no penis should bend. It hurt a lot to the point I had to lift her off me and throw her off the bed. It took 7 days to recover. She was on top when I heard a doll pop from within. Pulled out and blood was dripping from my penis. Turned out I snapped my banjo string. Bella went white after a bit of bleeding. A girl I liked, we ended up in bed. She had bragged about her tongue skill and kissing skill. It was like having an electric toothbrush in my mouth. Granted, my mouth was clean. Lol. The guy who started going down on me, really going to town, thought he was all that in a bag of I was still wearing my underwear. Then asked me if I liked it, rolling eyes face. After nice sweaty sex, I sat on her white sheets. Stood up and I'd left the mother of all shit skid marks. I've been using wet wipes or washing ever since. This is a traumatizing part of Reddit. One story is topping the next. And never imagined situation really happening or could happen in a way people describe. She was on top and went up a bit too high and came down hard. Stabbed her in the thigh and it almost broke. One of the most scariest moments of my life. Dizzy face, dizzy.